Welcome to Creating Branded Templates with InDesign. We're waiting for more folks to come in. We're going to give it till about 1 or 2 minutes after the top of the hour and we'll get moving here. We're very excited to have you all with us. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We've got a lot of people interested in branded InDesign templates, which we're very excited to share with you. Some of the latest innovations we've been working on, but we're waiting for a couple more people to come in. So we're going to give it another minute as the system catches up. Oh, we have Switzerland on the line. Yeah, if you want to say hello in the chat, you're welcome to do that. Excited to connect with all of you. Hello from Michigan and Italy, South Africa, Scotland. Every time zone is here. Minnesota, Wisconsin, Maine, New York. Oh, we've still got a lot of people coming in. Kansas City's here. South Carolina's in the house. Ontario. Deutschland. All right, should we go ahead and get started? Thank you so much for joining us today for our Creating Branded Templates with InDesign webinar. This is Jill Talvinsari. I'm here with Silicon Publishing, and we're very excited to show you what we've been up to with our latest product, Silicon Designer, and how you can use that with branded templates. Max Dunn, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves? Each of the panelists can take a moment to let you know our background on InDesign and InDesign templates. Welcome, Max.
Let's see. Can you hear me?
Sure can.
I'm Max Dunn. I'm the co-founder of Silicon Publishing, and I'm thankful to work with all these wonderful people that make InDesign happen on the web.
Brett, do you want to say hello to everybody and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. I'm Brett Kisner. I'm Director of Business Development at Silicon Publishing.
And
Glad
Scott,
to be with you.
Scott from Scott Citron Design. Hey.
Hi. Hey there. Hey, everybody. Scott Citron here from New York City. I'm a designer and an Adobe certified trainer in InDesign and a couple other programs, and also very happy to be part of the group.
And special welcome to Greg. We've been working with Greg for a long time at CoCreators Group.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Greg Wasmuth, and I've been working with Silicon Publishing for about, I think it's 18 years, Max. I'm not sure, but I've built a lot of portals using Designer, what you're going to see today, which is a simplified version of InDesign for the web. So really excited to walk you through a few templates and how that all happens.
And Oli, the brains behind the machine.
I worked at Adobe early on in InDesign scripting, worked on documenting and evangelizing scripting, and they let me work on the design of it a bit too. I'm also the author with David Blattner and Bob Brinkhurst of Real World InDesign, and I've been doing this stuff since 1985. Before that, I was a typesetter before this desktop publishing fad came along.
Silly fad, yeah. Well, you win. I'm Jill Talvinsari. I've spent the last couple of decades working with InDesign server-based marketing content solutions and digital asset management solutions, and I'm very impressed with ours and excited to be here. Also spent some time at Adobe. So Max, do you want to take it away?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, sure can.
Today we're going to talk about sort of the how do you do it first. You know, we extend the InDesign document model, and I'll show why that happens and explain how the designer ends up being the queen or king of the editing experience in our world when we set up InDesign templates for online editing. And then Greg will dive into examples, you know, real examples of how you do this, how he has done this for years and years and years, making these things happen. And Scott will then show some recent design work that he did for online editing that shows sort of the spectrum of stuff that you might want to do. And finally, we'll end up with questions and answers and next steps. So to start, I thought I'd talk briefly about the InDesign document model, not to bore you, but you know, from our perspective, the main part of the model is really about how your document's going to look, the visual appearance, the print output, the graphic output, whatever's coming out of it. The fundamental characteristic of the document model is what is it going to look like? What's the geometry of the page? What pieces comprise the document? What images, what text, what fonts, what reference swatches? So it's really mainly about how it looks and how it gets produced when you start with the document model. But critical to our work is extending that, and InDesign is built in a beautiful way such that extensibility is possible. Oli will talk about that briefly. So we extend it because we want to make the editing experience really powerful and really what you need. So we'll show the various ways we do that. You know, the main concept is that you will have different needs when you're editing. Some people want to enforce the branding. So if you're a franchise and you're having your franchises customize just the address and the email and the website and the location, you don't want to have them change your brand. So you generally would lock everything down. In some cases, if you're building like a normal document for business, you might want to have header styles like you would in Word and a selected set of styles, and you would want to change the styles, but you would want to stay within a constrained set. In the freeform world, there are creative products like photo books or yearbooks where you want to let people do whatever the heck they want, as if InDesign is in their browser and they can align things, add objects, change them, change style at will. So we're going to show the gamut of that. And another subtle dimension is that within one document, you might want to have different behaviors, as we'll show. So you might want to lock down just one region or have one part of it free and the rest not. So we're going to show that whole spectrum. The fundamental way that our designer product works is we set up an InDesign document, and it's got all of the normal InDesign stuff around the document model that's saying what it looks like and how it renders, but it also has metadata, which we extend, that's going to inform that user experience and make the experience unique and special in the way that you want it. We're using our tool, Silicon Designer, and that's an end-to-end solution that includes the setup tools, the web client, the admin tool, and all of the technology needed to make an end-to-end experience that we're going to show. And it just basically takes in the InDesign document model with the metadata we've added and creates the editing experience that you want. And Oli, I thought you'd talk briefly about why InDesign is best suited for this kind of thing and how InDesign really supports the incredible things we do. Before we see them, Oli, you had some experience with Adobe.
Sure. The key thing here is that the InDesign document model is complete. It can describe everything that can change in an InDesign document. So other scripting solutions often will do one thing or another, but InDesign, it does it all. So everything that can touch the document is in the model. And so that gives us things like IDML and InDesign snippets, which are also InDesign library items, because the way that those technologies work, and I worked on those too, is to run through the scripting object model and emit it as XML that can define a fully formatted InDesign document. So at SBI, we've taken that a step farther, where we have our own plugins that extend the model, which is basic part of InDesign extensibility. And then we essentially create our own kind of IDML that defines how the document will present itself in a web interface. So that's the 30,000-foot view.
Okay, we'll get into some real documents now. I'll just show you this sort of in action. And I'll start out with InDesign. And this document in the picture, should it show up? Trying to move to the document I want to show. Seems my computer's rather frozen. I'll go back to the web and hope that InDesign, there it is. And in the web, it's this one. So in InDesign, I've got this document, and it's a normal InDesign document, but it also has a plugin. This plugin, it lets me define how things are going to behave. And this is what Greg will show in detail. But the point is, we've got, in this case, 5 types of object. These are 5 types of experience that correspond to the different assets on the page. So we have an editable image, an editable graphic, editable text, static graphic, or static image. And this is basically a fairly simplistic view where you can say this is locked down and can't be moved. This is editable and can be moved. And this is a very bare bones sort of way to set up a document template. And whatever I've chosen in the setup will then become reality on the page. So I can take this object and change the text, that's because this document object was set up that way. Because I've set this one to be a replaceable object, I can replace the graphic. And there may be other data on here informing how I can move things, if I can fit it or scale and crop it, if I can rotate it. I'm not sure how that's set. Let me see. Yeah, this allows rotation. And so we basically give a rules-driven approach to setting up the template and informing in InDesign what's going to happen on the web. That's the key thing is going from InDesign to the web and making that web experience what you want, what you need. So Designer makes InDesign files editable, and you can have really fine-grained control, as we'll see. And we do this with plugins, but we can also do anything without plugins if we really have to. There are certain organizations that cannot use plugins, don't want to deploy them. So we've had thousands of designers work in pure InDesign methods to provide the metadata they need. And we have a large, wide range of use cases, and that's why it's so different. You know, like I said, if you're a franchise, you'll lock everything down. If you're a pharmaceutical, you'll process everything through legal. But if you're a kid making a school yearbook, you want to be as free as you can. So we've seen the gamut of use cases, and that turns into the gamut of interfaces. So our interfaces are really very flexible. We make them whatever you can imagine. It's built in a way where we use web standards to customize the front end. And in any case, the designer, the one creating the InDesign template, is going to really inform that user interface and make that happen. And so we've seen a wide range of situations where things need to be controlled. And we go quite far at making sure that whatever you want to do is going to be facilitated by the system. So just like InDesign is extensible, our designer is extensible, and we have just a very wide, broad range of stuff you can do. It's got in common that we're always passing information that will inform this experience. In this case, I have a bunch of features. This one can pull in content from content sources and place them on the page. And it can do color themes and change the whole theme of the document just by moving through a set of themes. So you can imagine this was set up, this template was set up consciously, not just to provide what one look would be, but enough information that we can pull in these themes and change that look dramatically in a very easy, simple way that a non-InDesign user can do. So that's my overview of Designer. And then I'd like to turn to Greg. Yeah, it's been 18 years we've been working with Greg, and Greg can show.
I know, time flies, it's crazy. Crazy. Thanks, Max. I don't know, Jill, are you
Yeah,
still
let's go ahead and
online?
launch that poll.
Okay, great. So we have a poll here. What's the question?
So have you ever created documents for online editing? And the follow-up question is, have you created branded templates for InDesign for the bonus points?
Nice. So
Let's
if
just
everyone
give
can
everyone
go
a
ahead.
minute.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead. Answer those. That would help me to kind of understand how experienced you are with creating templates that go into some form of an online editor or not. And then I can walk you through how that goes.
And just while we're waiting for that, couple of questions just to mention to everyone. There is a Q&A pod. If you have any questions, feel free to type in those as we go. And the slides and the presentation will be posted to the Silicon Publishing YouTube channel following the webinar.
So I think we're done with our poll. Well, no, we've got a couple more still coming in. But generally speaking, we're split with those that have created documents for online editing. 30% have created documents for online editing, 70% have not. And it's split about 50-50 for the number that have used branded templates for InDesign. Let me share the results with everyone so you can see that.
That's really helpful.
So now you know what to tell us.
And Jody says yes and yes with horrible results. That was
So
my life. That was my life. I saw that in the comments there, Jody. And I tell you, I have always loved to play where technology fuels creativity, and I've had to create platforms for thousands of automotive dealers, for General Motors, for Toyota, Ford. And then I went on and created platforms for Charles Schwab, and we had 12,000 financial agents come online. So one thing for sure is it has to be intuitive, because I've seen things go to print where people have entered into some form. I'm working on it for a website URL and not realizing that wasn't just filling out a form like you're filling out an application, but that you were literally designing the document online using a branded template. So I've seen the gamut. I've seen the need for form fill. I've seen the need for WYSIWYG editing. I'll show you WYSIWYG editing today, but really Designer gives you all of that power and flexibility all within one platform. You can lock it down and make it form fill. You can make it completely WYSIWYG and online editable. And so just to sort of, I feel your pain. And for those who haven't had to do this, you'll love the way Designer works. So here I am on my screen. Just confirm you can see my screen all right?
Yeah, we can see it.
Perfect. So I'm in good old Adobe InDesign. And then on the other side of things, I also have the online browser available. And so here I am in Silicon Designer. I'm in Chrome. And of course, online, I don't need Adobe InDesign. So I could be giving this to thousands of people that don't have to have InDesign, and they may need to make the occasional change. So this gives a lot of flexibility to a distributed team, any sort of network of individuals that need to make edits to a document. But of course, that can open up a whole host of problems. So I've always loved the solution where I can be inside InDesign, right? And in that, I can basically lock down what I don't want people to change. So let's say I'm working for Fashion Monthly. This is my little example here. So I obviously wouldn't want people to change my logo and go put in their logo. But let's say I'm partnering with Interbrand Hotels in this global fashion tour, and I do want to swap that logo out because every single city might have their own logo for whatever hotel is in that particular city. So this is sort of a placeholder versus this one, which is locked down. So how you use the template markup tool is, what I love about it is I've seen it evolve over the years. From initially I had to tag everything with all of those options, and now they're all organized in styles, which is incredible. So I can say, look, this is a static image. Don't let anyone touch it. So I'll just use this style. I'll show you what's in that though. If I edit that style, you can see this screen here gives me all of the options that that style runs on. So I don't, in this case, want to make it editable or movable, you know, whatever the case may be. Let's see here, if it's a static graphic, I could switch it to that one. And then this one just says it's visible, you know, so that's actually what I want for this one, is more, I just want a static graphic. So it's not selectable, deletable, movable, rotatable, scalable. So this is the kind of power that you're giving people or not giving them. So in this case, I only want it visible. So let's jump online and I'll switch and show you what that looks like online. So over
Greg,
here, go ahead.
While you're going there, I just want to interject with one question we've got. So one of the questions was, do our customers need to have InDesign to edit these templates that we create? So if you can use that as your jumping off point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I previously mentioned, I'm just in a web browser. All I need to do is have a web browser. I have, of course, there's nothing inside this browser that requires me to have InDesign or anything. I'm just running this. This is just an HTML5 window. And so this web app is what is, there's the trick of translating everything into this. That's what's taken, you know, over 8 years of development work to make this look exactly like this document over here. So if you have the two together, you see, let me just show you side by side here. So you got the two together. This document is pixel perfect. There's not many systems out there, in fact, almost none, that can do this pixel perfect render, but that's the secret, is I don't need InDesign on this interface, which is really cool. So then, as you can see here, this is locked down. See, I can't click it. I'm clicking actually this triangle, but I can't click Fashion Monthly, so it's locked down. Whereas, like I said, I want to be able to swap this. If it's a different size logo, I may want to move it. So I'm giving people the flexibility to move that one, but not the Fashion Monthly logo. That's a great example just of the ability to lock down and protect different assets. And again, with these styles, I don't have to go through, I know that has all the attributes I'm looking for, so I don't have to go through and do all of these checks each time for every single little object in my design. Another area where there's a little nuance where it's, well, maybe I don't want to move it around. So in this case, I'm moving the asset around. I want to show you, what I did was I actually set up, and I've been actually editing this, so I'm just going to refresh this page just to start from the exact same look as this page here. So this object in the corner, this woman at the pool, I can't move the object. You see, I can't click it, whereas the one beside it, I can. So again, I'm showing you just as a designer, it's your decision what you want people to do. So you may want them to not move these because that's how you as a designer wanted to lock this down. So that's, again, simply, if I look at this one, it's image static, right? If I look at this one, it's all options are on for this one. So if I show you this style, everything is checked. I can delete it, move it, rotate it, right? And I'll show you that online. So here I am, I'm you know, doing what a designer would dread. Everyone's panicking. I'm scaling it, rotating it, making it as beautiful as I think. And of course, as a designer, I'm like, I don't want you doing that. So I would actually prefer this, which is, if I double click on the image, I can make that image nice, but I'm not going to affect my overall design. So in this case, maybe I want to rotate it to you know, have that leading edge of that pool. Now it leads in the way I wanted from a design perspective versus obviously this flexibility. You don't want to do that. So this is you know, the difference between what I'm locking down and what I'm not locking down. We've gone from not editing anything like this fashion logo to editing the content within it, right? And I'll use the thirds principle and lead that into that lower third. And so that's basically the kinds of variations, you know, just on basic image management that you as a designer can control in this simply with the click of a style. I mean, that's how easy it is, which is what I love about this.
Make it look so easy when you do it, Greg, and I know it is so easy. We've got a couple of questions, if I can.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Go ahead.
So one of them is this document going to be printable directly from the browser, or will they need to go back through InDesign?
That's a great question. No, it's subtle. And when people said you don't need InDesign, well, you do. We use a tool called InDesign Server, and this is all based on having an InDesign server. So you can print from the browser if you want to enable that functionality, but what you're really doing is not coming out of the browser to your printer. It's hitting InDesign Server, rendering a high quality PDF, and then that PDF is fed to the browser, and you can print that PDF, which came out of InDesign Server. Importantly, we round trip back. We take everything you've done in the edits, and we go and hit the server and create a PDF that will render exactly what you did. So it's using a server-based form of InDesign, and that's how you can legally feed InDesign output, real literal InDesign output to all of your users without having any of them have InDesign itself. So there is a server component.
And just to be clear, the user wouldn't be aware that there was InDesign Server. They just think it's magic, right?
Right, it's sitting on the web. For them, it's a cloud. They don't have to install a thing other than the browser, but they're getting an InDesign rendition that did come out of the InDesign engine at the end of the day.
Great, thank you.
That's great, Max. Yeah, and as Max was talking, I don't know if you saw that, but from the browser, I said, show me a preview of this as a PDF. This got generated, and you can see the little watermark because we're using the developer edition. And so that went across it, but that's the actual PDF, and you see it's pixel perfect for all my little crazy design edits, like this little rotated hotel shot. Looks exactly like this.
It would not have the watermark if we were running this on a normal server.
Exactly. Yeah, we were just, this is just the developer edition, but as you can see, I didn't need an InDesign plugin. I didn't need anything. I just work on this in this particular interface. So that's, yeah, that's great. Easy.
And so another set of questions on here, which I think is, you know, every designer always thinks about this, but is how do the fonts work? And, you know, are there limitations around fonts?
Yes.
I love it. Go ahead, Max.
You could probably speak to that.
Sure. So for full-on designer, what we're looking at here, we can support any TrueType or OpenType font. It's kind of difficult to go to old PostScript Type 1 fonts. It can be done, but you run into problems because people could be, those fonts are different across platforms, so we try not to use those. But our editing experience, whatever the customer has, whoever's putting the website together, whatever fonts they have licenses for, and then of course open source fonts we can handle. Wanted to say that we worked really hard to make it possible to do this round tripping, where within the limitations of HTML5's typesetting, we get as close to InDesign typesetting as we can. So things like tracking, kerning, open type features, and so on, we were able to support. But InDesign, what you can do in InDesign is still a lot greater than what you can do in HTML5. But the bottom line is you don't have to worry about the text composition changing visibly as you go from the web editing experience to InDesign and back again.
Yeah, and it's you know, it's also, you know, important to think there are a number of different ways this can be supported. So, you know, what you're seeing here is all the type, you know, live WYSIWYG in the browser, just like just like you would in InDesign. But there's also the ability to do this from the server as well. And so there are multiple approaches, and ultimately it depends on, you know, what the needs and the use cases are specifically for the customer.
Yeah, that's true. And just just to be clear, the designer doesn't have to worry about uploading the fonts. Whoever would be administering this install would be doing that behind the scenes, and they would just show up here in the drop down, whoever set that up. Because again, there are licensing issues with fonts, as people have mentioned. I think Gary mentioned that you know, licenses for some people don't have that that ability to just use any font, you know.
Sure, but it's not the license that the individual user has, but the license that the organization that's making this online editing solution available has. So that can be quite different. So what that means is that if you're putting something up for franchises to edit, they don't have to have the fonts as long as the company they're part of does. So it's the individual users don't, but the particular web interface and InDesign server combination, those licenses work.
So is that a cost savings then for a company?
Could be.
Or yeah, it could be depending on how many people. Yeah, I mean, in my case with Charles Schwab, we had 12,000 agents. None of them had to have these fonts. We just ran it from the server. That's great.
Yeah, so another question on those lines. Can you, a little different from fonts though, can you allow users to add elements to the page?
Absolutely. Yeah, if you want them to, there's document level parameters, so you can include or not include that ability. So I'll go full screen on this side, the right side, which is the web browser, and we have allowed that. And up top, I can add graphic objects. So let's say I want to add a star and I want to add it right here. Then I just click on that and now I've got myself a star. Or if I wanted to add a rectangle, which is a little more common, I can add a rectangle. I can also just drag an image into that. And now I've got an image graphic, and I can again move that actual image that's inside the image frame separate from the object itself, if that makes sense. I think most designers will understand the difference. There's a frame for an image, and then there's content within it. And I can actually control both just by double clicking into that. And then I can move that new object that didn't exist because I've allowed that for this document template.
Yeah, and since you're showing images, another question that came in was why, in the template markup tool, did we distinguish the graphic and the image? And, the simple answer of that is that it allows us to differentiate between the vector and the raster art. And so when we actually package these templates up, we can convert those vectors into SVG to allow them to scale, appropriately without losing any resolution, just like that inner brand image there.
Yeah, and I saw someone that asked, hey, what if I'm using a low res image, and heaven forbid I'm making a giant poster out of that image. I don't know if there's a low image graphic here, but eventually it'll get to the point where if I'm using this, so extreme that it just did it. Look at that. So somebody asked, is there a way to protect people from using poor low-res images where they need to be big? And then I got that one to work. So now I can't publish this. I can't save this. I can't print it because now there's a message that says I'm under the DPI constraint, which is a document level setting, of course. So that's that hopefully answers that person's question I saw.
Yeah, so there are lots of other questions, but I think we should continue moving on. We will come back to more of those.
I know.
As we go.
Yeah, we can move on.
I'm having too much fun.
To Scott's templates and.
No, I want to do this forever, Max. Come on. I'll stop sharing.
Okay, and while we switch over to Scott, an important point there is that we do lots of validation on the document, so that when you have non-InDesign users, non-designers using InDesign, we can kind of keep things on the right track, and those rules are definable by the customer, whoever's hosting the web editing experience. Great. So Scott Citron has built some wonderful template examples here, and there are three examples I want to show that just sort of show the breadth of use case and some of the nuance. I was pointing out this text frame for Mike Kelly is just content editable. It's only editable in terms of the content, and I set that up this way. And here's the template in InDesign, and then I'll go see how it came out on the web when we put it into the web. I guess we should have some real estate images to go with it. So here we have the same document, and because I made this one just content editable, I cannot move it. I can't move this frame at all. I left this one as an example. It probably would also be the same way, but this I left to be completely freeform, movable, and the user can, they want their headline to do whatever the weird thing they want with, but they're not going to touch the rest of the document in this case. And so that's one type of content. This down here is absolutely static. So we left this legalese
or fake legalese locked down so it won't change unless the lawyer, can log in and get access to it. That's another thing we can do, is have different users have different rights to different objects. So it gets very granular. But here's a real estate flyer, and I can just change the image, change the pricing. You can crop and scale. Like I said, we're using a similar to InDesign model for the cropping and scaling. We find that really cool that you can have independent image from the frame. So when you're done, it's going to go back to InDesign properly. Also, that's another factor. We're kind of lazy. We're using InDesign methodologies on the web because InDesign is so cool. But this is an example where it's pretty constrained, and you're mainly locked down. The next one is a banner ad, and this shows a couple types of metadata. If I can let it load, I'll load it in the browser. This ad was set up in InDesign to be pretty free form, and it's simple, but there are examples here of what you can do that graze the nuance of what can be done. I mean, this bottom part, it says sign up, send message. This is not truly editable content. This is sort of an indicator to the user of what context this is going to show up in. So we have
that's part of the Facebook interface.
Exactly. So that would be the Facebook interface, but it's a helpful clue to the users as to how, first of all, what kind of content are you building? They know it's Facebook, and it's a visual cue, but it's something you would not print. So that's another part of the metadata, is saying this is a non-printable object, that is going to show up at when you're editing, but it's absolutely not in the final InDesign output. So we're controlling both of those. And
one thing I wanted to add about the last the real estate ad, Max.
Yes.
Was that those the area there where it shows the agents and their names and all their information, that typically when I would lay out something like that in InDesign, it would all be contained in one text frame. But because I wanted each item to be separate and either editable or not editable, I broke these up into individual frames. So if you go to the mic, you'll see the real estate broker line is its own object, and that's its own object, and everything is its own object, and that way you have more control over what can be edited and what can't.
Right, but we do allow both. It's important. We do allow inline formats, so you can format one word, or you can change the paragraph style within a single text frame. So that's the kind of thing that you run into when you're designing for online, is those decisions. And some people want one or the other depending on the context. Both have their places where they're needed. So this is just a simple freeform editor for a Facebook banner. So that would also have a rendition intent that's probably not print. So it would go to a PNG probably, or a JPEG, and it would crop it to omit the part that we didn't really want to render, but wanted to put there in the rendition right on the canvas as something. What are other examples of that? Can you think of things that wouldn't print that would show up in the UI?
Oh, well, sure, like instructions, like enter your text here or replace this graphic. Things like that. You could have things that were, suggestions to the user about how this is used. That's important for things like someone asked about doing email blasts, and we have versions of Designer that create content for email. So there might be things there about how this is going to work in someone's email, mostly instructional stuff. But then there's a fair amount of stuff that you want to have in the other way too. Things you want to have in print, like crop marks and cut marks, and you know, die cut indications and things like that, that can all be in the print but not presented in the web editor. So it goes both ways.
Awesome. And so the last document is this one, which is Scott did a very free form thing. Scott, you want to talk to what you were aiming at here?
Well, it's a high school yearbook, and the idea is that it is very free form. It's not a strict grid. Everything kind of moves around at whim. And so I was just trying to have fun with this stuff and see what I can come up with, and then see how it translates to the designer. And it's amazing to me that you can take a document as complex as that and then bring it into designer and still be able to swap out pictures, move pictures. I see that the drop shadow is supported around that red line, and pretty much everything that was in the original document is honored here in the designer.
Yeah, and it lets the student creator, you know, into a football player or whatever they want, and it's
Right.
They then can position them in ways that would maybe make a designer cringe and might make their parents cringe. But you know, that's where we also have to introduce some of I'm trying to learn our own tool here, but we have to introduce some of the InDesign-ish tools when people want to be this free form. As soon as you get the ability to move stuff around, you're going to say, "Oh, can I align that? You know, can I align those two objects?" And we never wanted to be this close to InDesign, but we are now. We have the ability to do a lot of things, snap to grid, guides. We have all sorts of methodologies for the freeform environment that are different than you would, you know, have in a lot of apps would never have this much creativity or this much freedom. You would you know, be.
And the other thing is, I'm sorry, Max. The other thing I was going to say is that you don't have to be an InDesign expert to be able to do this kind of stuff. Obviously, you need to know InDesign in order to create the initial template. But once the template is figured out, then this can be passed along, and pretty much anybody can jump in and then edit it. I mean, I was on the yearbook team in my high school in the 70s, and when I think about the way that we created yearbooks back then and the way that you can do stuff now, this is just an amazing technology. And so it's just pretty much anybody can do it. It just takes somebody to create the original template.
You're having dreams of paste up grids there.
Right.
Yeah.
We have kind of a philosophy of the template and the designer being king. But then that you want to enable collaboration with other people who aren't designers, who aren't template creators.
Yeah, you don't really need to know much here except pretty much point and click.
Yeah, well, we can make it more or less complex if you need complexity, but it's there. If you want to make it simple, we can also make it a form fill. There's many. We're totally agnostic as to the interface, really, on the UI.
And Max, in terms of that, there were actually a couple UI questions. I'm going to give them to you together. One of them was about support for multilingual UIs, and then the other was around you know, using the UI in mobile.
Great questions. Yes, we localize, and we're localizing to more and more languages, so we can make an interface in a different language. It's been something like 15 or 16 languages around the world so far as the UI languages, and I think more than that in the actual template languages. We're not everywhere yet, but we're headed there. And then mobile is also, we're very friendly to mobile. We've had some incredible things we've done on phones and tablets. It's a little too bad that most of our biggest clients don't care that much about mobile for some reason, because when you're doing WYSIWYG stuff, it gets a little challenging to do your yearbook on a phone. But a lot of the smaller clients, a lot of the simpler use cases are mobile first, and this is absolutely built with standards to support mobile.
Yeah, and if you think about some of the use cases like real estate, you know, the type of user who use that is typically working from a a phone or an iPad. So you're going to deliver an interface, and that interface, you know, as several folks have mentioned, is completely customizable, can be tuned to really, you know, target that type of user.
Should be easy. You know, that it's making it easy on a small phone is different than making it easy on a large computer.
So should we dive deeper into the Q&A now?
Yeah, before that, let's just go through who we are. So we're clear, there's 3 companies here. Greg Wasmuth has his company called CoCreators Group, and he is a sort of marketing technologist. Scott is one of the best designers on earth, and he's really, you know, a designer. And we're the ones who built, Silicon Publishing is the ones that built the designer tool we're showing, but it's used by people like Greg and Scott. So this is the information to go forward, but sure, any questions?
Yeah, so I'll peel them off, and then you guys can decide who wants to answer them, and I'm happy to take some if you'd like. But the first question came, there were a couple questions having to do with data being fed into Designer, you know, whether or not you can merge data from elsewhere, whether it's a CSV or an Excel or a database.
Great question. Yes, it goes 2 ways. So in the first place, we have variable concepts around resolving variables when the page is loaded. So if you log in and you're Greg Wasmuth, the real estate agent, it can know who you are and put your picture and your address and name there automatically, because we used a variable coming in to the template, right? So it's coming in and being resolved right there. After that, it might not be a variable anymore. It's become the new document, Greg's personal document, right? The other way we use variables is on the output to render out content, and we can take, say, that real estate postcard and have everything variable and change the image, change the property name, change the price, change the agent. And as long as those are variables in the document, we can run that against, you know, any number of records. So we've done, you know, 30 million piece mailings, and really exotic variable content is quite doable.
Yeah. So another couple questions have to do with colors. I know there were definitely, you can tell we've got designers within our attendees. Folks asking about how color themes work, as well as whether you can use spot colors and things like that.
Oli can elaborate, but at a high level, yes, we support RGB, CMYK, spot, and Oli, how do they work? I mean, color themes.
Oh, well, just whatever color types InDesign supports, we can support. And like Max said, we do the most common ones in the web interfaces. I don't think that we've had a call for, say, HSB colors or things like that. But anyway, we every color type that InDesign supports, we support. And then again, we put metadata on it to make sure that if you're using a theme, that these colors all know that they're part of the theme and go together. And then, you know, there's always going to be a problem with the web editing interface for color, because you can't really make everyone calibrate their screen. So there are some limitations there, but in general, the colors work just the way they do it in InDesign, and whether you support spot or not depends on you know what the output is on the backside. But a lot of these implementations are from big printers, so they have things set up so that when you specify a spot, it stays a spot and comes through that way in your press-ready PDF and in output.
Awesome. So Max, while you're on that document, actually, there was a question about text and flowing from column to column, as well as what happens when there's overset. And you know, the short answer is there are a few different ways this can be handled. But if you can see, Max is typing here, and you're seeing his cursor went from one column to the other. And of course, if he were to continue typing, that text would eventually get overset and warn the user. In some workflows, customers opt to have the overset accommodated by simply shrinking the content. Of course, they can set limits on that, but in other cases, you can simply throw up a warning, just like we did with that the image resolution, but in that case, warning the user that there is overset.
Yeah, and again, copy fitting is something where there are rules that you can set up for how we copy fit. So if you, in some instances, if you type too much, do we just start changing the font size? Do we try to use tracking first to make the text fit? And those are all configurable rules. So Max has got one here that's pretty good.
Yeah, and as Max is going through this, I know one of the questions was, how do you choose a template? And this is one of our customers' sites, and is a good example of allowing them to browse the templates available, and then that will launch the editing experience.
Yeah, so I think it's important to note that we are a module. This is not Silicon Designer. This is their wrapper site that is letting users select what they want to buy, and then they only open up Designer upon selecting an item and saying what they want to pay for it. And price of print in England goes lower every day.
And this is all part of that user experience. So other questions referred back to the downstream experience of what happens after you've edited. And we can talk more about that in a moment. Yeah, so you can see here the text is actually, in this case, automatically resizing. Within the template, you can actually set limits to that resizing, and if you reach it, it will go to overset. So Max, a couple questions about downstream. So the users come in, they've edited their document. Two questions that came up is, at the end of that, can you restrict the user from being able to actually get that PDF so that it can be reviewed? Another question around that is about whether you can have an approval process. And a third question is, can the designer actually get a copy of the InDesign document created from the editing session?
That's a wonderful combination of questions. So I can answer all of those at once. Yes, it's the beauty of this is it's always creating an InDesign file in memory. What you do with that is totally up to you. And you have all the InDesign APIs available to you, so you can get from that whatever you wish. And you don't need to give anybody a printable copy. Most of our high quality print sites want anything but giving a high quality print. They don't want you to make their editing tool create great PDFs for some other printer, right? So on the other hand, some portals are happy to let you print anywhere, and they want to give you the PDF. So it's up to you and your site and your configuration who you give what. And it's absolutely an option to feed a review and approval process. So we have a lot of systems that do that. We're not building that typically. We built mild workflow, but if we go into a system like Adobe Experience Manager, it has a robust review and approval workflow. So when someone makes one of our integrated designers work out of Adobe Experience Manager, the person building the document, when they finish, it goes right into an approval queue immediately, automatically. But that's using the functionality of that DAM. Other people build their own systems for workflow. We integrate with lots of DAMs, but the review and approval can happen. And the document types, like I said, can be whatever you want. So you can get a high quality PDF, a low quality PDF, a JPEG, a PNG, a watermark, or the InDesign document itself is really cool. You can always get that because it's always part of the process. Before you render anything, it's going through InDesign server. So that InDesign file is valuable to some people. A lot of people want to be lights out and just feed a press, and others want to intermediate and approve, review, tweak, adjust, etc.
Yeah, and Max, you started to touch on another question, which is very simply, I'm going to read it as it was typed. DAM integration?
Yes, we integrate with way too many DAMs. I don't think I have a list here. I guess I have a list of a few of them, but it's one of our side specialties is connecting the Adobe Creative Cloud to asset management systems. And when we built a lot of designers, we have, here are a select few of our DAM partners, but we definitely connect to many, many different systems. And we have some integrations we've built, and we know the APIs inside out, and we know the platforms inside out. But generally these days with RESTful services and APIs and modular architectures, it's not hard for us to connect to things.
So another question, my guess is this this person works with a lot of folks making presentations, and they ask, and I'll kick this one off. They ask about why you would use this over PowerPoint for presentations. And you know, the real simple answer is you get the full power of InDesign in terms of your creative and your design, and you get the control from the marking up of the template to be able to lock down the elements of the document that you don't want them to modify. Ultimately, knowing if you're in a regulated industry, knowing that you're restricting users to edit only the things that they should, and limiting them from modifying things that may be controlled from a brand or regulatory perspective.
Also, InDesign has greater typography than PowerPoint. Wouldn't you say, Oli?
Well, yeah, and it has better printing capabilities. I mean, PowerPoint's pretty limited when it comes to print. But there was also a question regarding PowerPoint about whether, basically, general questions about what graphic formats can be used in this. Basically anything that InDesign can import, PDF, native Photoshop files, native Illustrator files, JPEGs, you know, the full gamut of graphic file formats, but not PowerPoint. So from PowerPoint, you would need to save or export in one of the formats that InDesign can work with.
Yeah, and so there was another question about text and styling. So I think Max, in your demo, you showed, you know, the ability to, you know, there's manually selecting the font and items like that, but certainly you can make use of paragraph and character styles as well.
And object styles, yeah.
And then another question, can you set bleeds and crops for print production?
Yes, and you do so exactly like InDesign. I mean, that's the beauty of it. It's all starting from InDesign, and we, at the end of the day, respect whatever you've done in your InDesign file.
And then there was just a follow-up when, Ole, you were talking about images. They want to be clear, can the user import their own image assets?
Sure, and that again depends on the particular implementation, but usually there will be a way to upload user-generated content, and that'll get turned into by the whatever the web app and web service are. That'll get turned into something that can be displayed on the web. So clearly, you know, if you're uploading something like a native Photoshop file, we're going to have to do some things to that to get it to show up on the web. But you know, most graphic formats, PNG and JPEG, for example, you just upload them. And then as far as file size limits go, that again depends on the particular host. But yeah, I mean, it's all, we need to make the file available to InDesign server that's handling the back-end rendering. So we need to be able to get that file to InDesign to have it put it in the layout. And then again, what you see in on the web app designer is some web-friendly version of that, and it's kind of a tag team in some cases where you'll have, you know, you'll have a PDF which you know, not all browsers can display. We'll turn it into something that the browser can display, like a PNG.
Fantastic. So I think we could probably go on with questions for quite some time, but I know we're nearing the top of the hour. Are there any last tidbits of wisdom any of the experts on the line want to share?
Scott?
I have nothing else. No, at the moment I have nothing. No, it's just a great system. You know, I'm pretty new to this, but I told you at the very beginning I was quite impressed. So that's it.
Yeah, I will say personally, I've been training folks on InDesign InCopy workflow since 2005. And I always said, well, why can't we just train people to work in a web browser? And when I first saw Designer, I think I fell in love.
Yeah, I mean, the sales enablement and other aspects of how you can use Designer are amazing. It really extends the marketing content workflow to everybody in your organization. They don't have to know how to do design, and it saves your designers time to spend their time being creative. It's a win-win.
Yeah, and Jill, I just wanted to add to that. This is Greg. If anybody has, you know, a use case or a scenario where they've got, you know, a requirement to do, let's say, marketing campaigns or sales collateral, and they want to brainstorm with someone, I'd be more than happy to meet with them. I've done, you know, some large-scale platforms and some smaller ones, and everybody's needs are unique. So I would be more than happy just to brainstorm everybody's, you know, with people about their scenario and how we could come up with a breakthrough solution for them.
Excellent. Yeah, we definitely encourage anybody on the line, and as well as anyone that is watching this on demand later, to get in touch with us for any customized or brainstorming ideas that you have. We're more than happy to go through it with you. So you've got everyone's contact information here. Scott, Greg, Max, Oli, Brett, thank you so much. We're at the top of the hour, and we appreciate everybody's time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks a lot,
Thanks,
Joe.
everyone. Yeah.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye now.